Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world to share their insights and expertise so we can all grow together. I am your host, Heidi Schock, and I am the co founder of the Spotlight to Scale Accelerator, where we drive revenue for companies by making sure they are seen as the authority and go to expert in their industry versus just another program or service. And today I am really excited to be bringing you my amazing guest. We've had some little chatting behind the scenes and all about he's the guru when it comes to mindset. I've learned so much already in our short time together. So welcome to the show and thank you for joining me, Gary Schoeniger.
Thanks for having me, Heidi. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm happy to dive in with you. And before we get started, you're with the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. Can you share a little bit, tell us who you are, what you do, and give us a little bit of information about your journey?
Sure. Thank you, Heidi. So the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, it's a company I founded in 2007. We are the world's leading provider of entrepreneurial mindset education, training, and professional development. That's a quick overview of what we do. I founded that company, as I said, in 2007. I don't even know how many years ago that was. I can't do math in public.
Me neither.
But it's born of this lifelong fascination, Heidi, with a simple question. Mm-hmm. How do underdogs win? How do people that have nothing create something? And that set me on a path like in the early 90s, to be honest with you. Like that's how long I've been on this journey. Mm. And so I'm not really like, it set me on a path to understand the entrepreneurial mindset. But I didn't set out to like interview Mark Zuckerberg and, Elon Musk types. I was more fascinated with the everyday entrepreneur that starts with, a couple $100, couple $1,000. They don't have, they don't have big ideas. They don't have venture capital. Like, how are they doing that? If we could, and my assumptions were that if I could somehow understand the differences between the way entrepreneurial people think and non-entrepreneurial people, that could be useful to anyone who not just wants to start a business, but people that want to grow, people that want more, the people that aren't happy where they are, people that feel stuck.
Yeah, and I love that you're doing interviews with like everyday entrepreneurs because we hear about those people that are, oh my gosh, so far beyond. We can't even fathom how they got there, how they got started. And there's a lot of successful entrepreneurs that we're seeing online that are emerging, and there's a lot of people that are struggling that you don't hear so much about. So I'm really excited that you took time to actually interview the everyday. So can you tell us more about what you found and tell us about, I'd love to start with your book because sure. You have a book that's out. Can you tell us about that, where we can find it and what inspired you to write it?
So let me just start with my first book, which I wrote in 2010, Heidi. I was doing a research project in 2008 for the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute in San Jose, California. And Cisco hired me to do a gap analysis on entrepreneurship education writ large. And I quickly, the initial research quickly showed that the way that we're portraying entrepreneurship in textbooks and classrooms is divorced from the reality of what a typical entrepreneur is actually doing. And Cisco said, well, what are entrepreneurs actually doing? And I said, well, I have some data, but there's not a lot of data out there. And so they gave me an opportunity to go across the United States, interview hundreds, like 200 everyday entrepreneurs. And, at first, Heidi, you start hearing these crazy stories and it seems like chaos, right? But after you've interviewed 5 or 10 or 20 or maybe 30 like everyday entrepreneurs, you start to recognize common and predictable patterns of beliefs and behaviors. But here's the catch. They're common and predictable patterns of beliefs and behavior of which the entrepreneurs themselves aren't completely aware. So they're operating on sort of intuition and, gut instinct and so forth. So Anyway, I'll come back to that in a minute. One of the entrepreneurs that I met in that research project was a guy named Clifton Talbert. He's one of the founders of Stairmaster. He's African-American. You know, he was about 65 when I first met him. I asked him, like, how did you learn how to think like an entrepreneur? I asked that question a lot, Heidi. Like, do you feel like you were born an entrepreneur, or did someone or something kind of ping you, you know, alter your thinking? And he said, like, look, I was born in this poor cotton community. I was born to a teenage mom. I didn't have a dad. I was picking cotton. That's the way it was, except for the fact that my Uncle Cleve owned the local ice house. And when I was 13 years old, Uncle Cleve invited me in and taught me these basic entrepreneurial principles through his behavior, you know? And he said, and I was like, wow, that's really a powerful story. So ultimately, what I'm getting to, Heidi, is my first book, Who Owns the Ice House? 8 Life Lessons from an Unlikely Entrepreneur, uses Clifton's story and the influence of his Uncle Cleve to draw out these 8 common beliefs that drive entrepreneurial behavior that I distilled from hundreds of interviews. We just use that story to tell it, right? But almost immediately, and we got some funding from the Kauffman Foundation, we created a curriculum, the Ice House Entrepreneurship Program. It's gone all over the world. We've trained thousands of educators, community leaders, nonprofit leaders, how to implement that program. It's in middle schools, high schools, college, university, all over the place. But almost immediately, once that got out into the world, I realized there was more, and I had to keep digging. And that's what my new book is. The Entrepreneurial Mindset Advantage is the hidden logic that unleashes human potential. And so what I did is I kept interviewing entrepreneurs, but then I started looking at the research to explain, like, why do some people think this way while others don't? This is like an empowering way of thinking. And it really is, you know, it really is a hidden logic that unleashes human potential.
So I want to dive into the hidden logic, Gary, but before we do that, you just shared that you've studied hundreds of entrepreneurs, you've everyday entrepreneurs, you've done the research. So what are some common traits or behavior that you've uncovered that these entrepreneurs share that allow them to see and seize opportunities that others may overlook?
Yeah, that's a great question, Heidi. So, and it's not easy to answer that question in a soundbite, but let me give it a try. Most entrepreneurial behavior arises from some dissatisfaction with the status quo. Maybe I want to escape poverty. Maybe there's a problem I want to solve. You know, maybe I just hate my day job and I have this yearning to be more self-directed. But if you understand the context, so let me back up 1 second. I define entrepreneurship as the self-directed pursuit of opportunities to create value for other people, right? So that kind of, let's just double click on that for a second. Like, most of us are engaged in other directed value creation. Someone else is telling us what's useful, right? And we're doing that to the best of our ability. But the entrepreneur is stepping out into the unknown and figuring out how to make themselves useful to other humans. So that definition of entrepreneurship is you know, you got to understand that first. That's the basic distinction, right? And then the idea is, okay, so now you're stepping out into the unknown. You got to figure out how to make yourself useful to other humans without the guidance of a professional teacher, without the benefit of a predetermined path or a predictable outcome. So what do? You try lots of things. You follow your interests. You start looking for problems to solve. You start looking. And so what the entrepreneurs are doing is they're looking for problems to solve, and they're experimenting. They're micro experimenting, and they're learning from the results. I mean, that's the short answer. And it's not, I mean, it's not because they're particularly brilliant or they've learned this. It's like that's how any organism would behave in resource constrained, ambiguous situations.
Mm.
Right? They're not taking big, bold bets. They're not mortgaging their house and going all in. The lack of money forces them to micro experiment. And the question I like to ask people is like, what's preventing you from making yourself more useful to more people?
Yeah.
It's all mindset, right? It's just like,
Well, there's fear there. I'm sure with people like, oh my gosh, I have children, I have responsibilities, and to mortgage my home to go all in on this, what am I risking? But those that risk it, I had a business coach and she flat out told us, she goes, I would rather take on a client that is strapped for money, and there's no other option than somebody that has a cushion.
100%.
Yeah.
The adversity becomes the advantage.
Mm.
That's so counterintuitive. But here's what I've gleaned. And by the way, Heidi, I just want to say this. The observations and analysis of everyday entrepreneurs have profound implications for how we think about learning and work. It's way, way bigger than just someone that wants to start a business.
Mm.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Right. So what I've learned from observing these entrepreneurs, Heidi, is that they're not taking big, bold risks. They don't have big ideas. They don't have venture capital. What they're doing is they preserve the core. Don't quit your day job, but reallocate some small modicum of your thought and effort out on the edges to start thinking about new ways to make yourself more useful to more humans.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, right? It's exploration and experimentation. But to your point, if people don't understand the process and they think it's just big risks going all in, they won't even look for opportunities. It's a no-go, right?
Yeah. Well,
Again, it's all mindset.
there's a big guru coach out there that says burn the boat. And you just shared don't quit your day job. So can you share like what your thoughts on that, talking to all these everyday entrepreneurs? What do you feel is the better option of burning the boat? So you don't have a plan B, or keeping that other option available because people need to fund their entrepreneurship dream also. But
Well,
sometimes there's two opinions on that side, on each side of the coin there.
here, without trying to be controversial, I understand the burn the boat mentality. I understand. But that's coming from a point of someone that's got a fairly high sense of entrepreneurial self-efficacy, confidence, abilities, access to resources. And it's just not what the typical entrepreneur actually does. Screw it, let's do it. That's great. Richard Branson, you're a billionaire. But like, having said that, there is some value in burning the boat because you're forced to, there's something that happens when you're backed into a corner, you're forced to go. I just don't think it's first of all what a typical entrepreneur actually does, and I just don't think it's reasonable for most people. I do, you can listen to my podcast. I've got hundreds of entrepreneurs. I don't have hundreds of them on the podcast yet, but sometimes for years they de-risk their ideas in the margins. They go to their day job, they come home, they change their clothes, and they jump into it. And it's 5, 6, 7 years later, they're doing 6 figures in their spare time. They're like, okay, I can shift now. Right? That's the more likely, more reasonable approach.
Yeah. And unfortunately, many of them don't last 6, 7 years, right? Because they burn out or they just don't feel, they feel like they're not going to make it. And there's so many people on that edge. They're like just about to make it and they give up, unfortunately. We see
Well,
that.
let's talk about that for a second, Heidi. And I think this is to the best of my ability, having interviewed nearly 700 of these entrepreneurs. I just interviewed entrepreneurs in like Cameroon. I was in West Africa a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
The story's the same.
Mm.
Um, I forgot where I was going to go with that now.
I was sharing with you how like many people give up, right? Like they're right
Oh,
on the cusp
yeah.
of
Thank
it
you.
and we're about to hit it, but we don't realize it. So it's okay. We've been doing this for so long. We've got, other people's voices in our ears going, are you going to keep going? We're literally right there, but we never reach it.
Well, so this is where I was going with my comment. As far as I can tell, Heidi, the single most important factor that distinguishes an entrepreneurial minded person from a non-entrepreneurial minded person
Hmm.
is a compelling goal. There, in almost every entrepreneur I have ever interviewed, very early on, they will start to articulate some kind of a vision, something in the future that's resonant with them that they're trying to get to.
Mm.
Right. And by the way, I've looked at the psychological research on that. It's nothing short of astonishing that when we have a future positive orientation and a self-directed orientation, that way of thinking enables us to access problem-solving abilities that are not otherwise available to us.
Mm.
So, but there's another nuance in here I want to bring up. Like a goal won't really be compelling if it doesn't serve others. So if you're just trying to make money for yourself, you're not going to tap into the most potent form of motivation, which is known as intrinsic.
Mm.
And so if that intrinsic motivation is not there, if you don't love it, if you're not doing it for the right reasons, if there's not a purpose-driven component to what you're doing, probably going to give up.
Yeah. Yeah. And we actually talked about this right before we came on here. You were sharing, I said, how was your weekend? And you were like, it's great. Sunday I was working. And it was because you love it. Like, right?
Right.
You love it. So your Sunday could be someone else's Monday. Your Sunday could be someone else's Wednesday. And I tell my kids, I was sharing with you, I have two teenagers, 14 and 15, almost 16. And I tell them, you really want to find something like back in my day, we were told, go to school, get the degree, do something that makes you money, right?
Right.
There wasn't a lot of leeway for finding what you love, finding the joy in it, and the money will come. And you hear that cliche all the time, oh, do what you love and the money will follow. But there's also jobs out there that people like what they do and they're still struggling. So I tell my kids, I'm like, find something that you love. Like right now, do internships. You don't need to be getting a job. Find internships, find what you like quickly. So you're not doing what I did. And now in my midlife, I'm finally doing what I enjoy doing. And that's entrepreneurship. And there's two things I want to tap into here, because at the beginning of our conversation, you were sharing with us how you interviewed Clifton Talber, and you asked him the question, was it something that you like is in you or something that you were taught? And he had his uncle to support him there and teach him. And I also had my father who ran three different real estate offices, and he started multiple businesses after that. That being said, there are other people like and I can't even think about them off the top of my head, but you hear these successful entrepreneurs, they didn't have that, right? They didn't have role models that were showing them what's possible by building businesses. So curiously, going back to that original conversation that we had where you're sharing that, have you seen a big, like a 50-50 mix of that where people are coming from circumstance where they're just like, I want something different. And then there's also people that have shown them the way. And then tapping into what you were just sharing, I want to talk about like your Sunday is somebody else's Wednesday too. But I really want to go back to that because you've talked to so many people and I'm really curious because I know my background, but then I hear other gurus that did not have that same upbringing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really good question. Also, Heidi, here's what I would say. I have a chapter in my new book called Our Entrepreneurs Made or Born. And I
Okay,
really
perfect.
feel like I put the final nail in the coffin of that question, right?
Right.
To the casual observer, they'll see you as a successful entrepreneur and they'll tell themselves that's just who Heidi is. And what they don't realize is your entrepreneurial behavior has very little, if anything at all, to do with your personality traits. And it has everything to do with the situation you are in and your subjective interpretation of that
Mm,
situation, right? It's a function of the person and the situation. So I don't want to get too wonky on the research, but here's what happens to a human when we find ourselves in some sort of an adverse situation.
mm,
Let's say a shitty job, right? Unfulfilling, low-paying job. We're just like, you know. Our brains reach into our memory to determine if this situation is escapable or inescapable. And if our memory tells us, based on past experience, we can escape this, it activates fight or flight. It energizes us. We start looking around for opportunities and solutions and exit strategies,
mm.
right? Now, if our brain tells us this is inescapable, it suppresses fight or flight because the brain is an efficiency mechanism. It's telling you, don't waste the energy. Redirect that energy towards coping strategies. And that's what most people do. They just turn on the TV, they go on social media and like, Monday morning, you know, I could break it down into a couple of sentences after interviewing all these entrepreneurs. It's all mindset, Heidi, but it's like
Yeah.
this. The people who are looking for opportunities, find them.
Mm,
And the people who aren't, don't.
yeah.
So that gets to mindset stuff, right? Like, are you looking for opportunities?
Yeah. For
And if you're
sure.
not, like, why aren't you? Because your brain is telling you, oh, I am who I am. The world is the way it is, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just doom scrolling or watching sports or drinking too much or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, perfectly said. So let's go to your what we talked about earlier a little bit, where about yesterday you were working and you were
Right.
loving and enjoying it and finding your passion and what you're sharing with me, and you've been sharing this with us, in tidbits with every single answer that you've had. It comes down to your why, like you mentioned. If you're doing this for money, and I tell that to people all the time. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Why do you want to have this business? Why do you want to grow it? Why do you want to start it? If it's to make money, that's great. And I want you to make money. But at the end of the day, the entrepreneurship road is not the easiest path you could be taking right now. So when those days get hard, it's going to be more than the money that's going to keep you going and move you
100%.
forward. So what is that why that makes you cry? Like you just
I
shared,
love that. Yeah.
yeah, what you just shared was, there is a reason when it comes to entrepreneurship that you're pushed out of it. I knew in my teenage years that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It did not happen fully until I was going through a divorce. And I needed, like, I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have to worry about bringing home the money, right? All of a sudden now I needed to figure things out. My why was I wanted to be home with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to be home with my kids, I needed to create the income. So the
Right.
money was great, but that wasn't going to keep me going being home with my kids, my son was navigating ADHD. They were moving into new schools. A lot of pandemic happened. So
Yep.
many things were happening. Pandemic happened after this was going on, but it happened soon after. And I knew that I wanted to be able, if they called me from school, I wanted to have that flexibility. I wanted to be able to take them to school, pick them up, be there for them. So that's what drove me. They're moving into their independence now. Soon they're going to be off to college. My why will change. So I love what you're talking into, because it's great that you want the money. It's great that you have this bug that you want, or idea, but it has to go deeper than that in order to keep it going.
Well, and to your point, Heidi, like the need for autonomy to make our own choices and be free to navigate our life is one of the most powerful motivating factors known to man.
Yeah.
But I want to come back to something else, like that phrase you said, like, do what you love and the money will follow. I remember that book came out in the 80s. And I'm saying, like, that's a recipe for disaster. What I would rewrite that book like this, I would retitle it, Do What You Love, and make sure what you love solves problems for other people, and the money will follow.
Yeah.
Because if you like to knit, you open a knitting shop, like, good luck with that. Right?
Yeah.
It's like it's so counter. I mean, this is the lesson from the Ice House book, Heidi. It's like, it's this simple secret. It's hiding in plain sight.
Mm.
You show up in this world with gifts, with interests and abilities. And your job is to figure out how to make yourself useful to other humans with those gifts. And when you do that, you will flourish and thrive. If you don't do that, you will suffer.
Mm.
End of story.
Yeah.
And the suffering might just be like a doldrum life, like you hate your Mondays and you watch sports or drink too much or whatever. But I was given a lecture at a university in Texas a couple of weeks ago. And I was saying to these students, like, if you don't figure out how to use your gifts to make yourself useful, like, you're going to suffer. And here's the thing, your community will suffer because they won't get your gift.
Yes.
So what I'm actually getting at here, Heidi, is I said earlier, there's this common and predictable pattern of beliefs and behaviors in entrepreneurs. It's because they're just trying to self-actualize. It's an organism. It's a natural, organic thing. I'm struggling to figure out how to make myself useful to other humans. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, so everybody's unique and has different gifts. And if you're going down this road of entrepreneurship, which we're inviting you into if you're not already here, there's a mindset shift around. I've seen it with my clients, Gary, around selling. A lot of women, female entrepreneurs, have an issue with, I don't want to ask for money. I don't want to do,
Everybody struggles with
and
that.
it's all about, if you're not selling, you're not serving. And like, to your case in point, what you just shared, Gary, if you are not offering your services, someone's staying stuck, or they're getting help because they're going to continue looking for that support. It's not like they need help. They've got a problem they want a solution to. So if you're not selling and they don't know that you offer it, they're not going to search for that with you. They're going to keep going until somebody actually makes them the offer. And many times that person's not going to be as well equipped to get them the solution as you are. So I really
100%.
love that you shared that. So you talk about nothing fails. So let's turn it to the other side of the coin. We talked about putting your back is against the wall. We got to make things happen. But let's flip the coin on, nothing fails like success. So can you explain how past success can hold us back, and what can we do to shift our mindset for continued growth?
Yeah. So let's talk about mindset. Like, mindset is to a person what culture is to a group. It's this pattern of beliefs and assumptions and values that we assume to be the correct way to perceive, think, and feel and navigate life. But once we accept something as the correct way, it drops beneath our conscious awareness, yet it continues to influence our behavior. Right? So the mindset that, It becomes a mindset, becomes a fixed way of thinking. And there's an evolutionary value to that. Like, it allows you to like function more and more efficiently. It allows you to do things, you just know it, you just do it, and you get better at it.
Mm.
So your mindset becomes a feature in stable conditions, but it becomes a bug in times of change. It prevents us from adapting. That's what it means to be maladaptive. We cling to the mindset that once enabled us to succeed, and we struggle to adapt in the face of change. That's why in times of change, a novice has an advantage over an expert. They're not steeped in a way of thinking.
Right.
Systems thinkers have said this in many, many different ways, right? Senge talked about it, like yesterday's solutions become today's problems. Mm. And that's part of what I'm saying in my new book, Heidi, is that we're so steeped in managerial thinking, we don't even recognize the entrepreneurial mindset. Mm. And we need both now.
Yeah.
Like, managerial values and assumptions are focused on replication, efficiency, they're linear. It's right. And we need that. Like, once you have something that's useful, you need to figure out how to replicate it and distribute it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
But the attitudes and skills required to discover opportunities are entirely distinct from the managerial values that are required to exploit the opportunity. But if all you have is a managerial mindset, all your problems are going to look like nails.
Yeah. I've been asked this question when it comes to leadership with corporations, because I do business. I'm a business strategist and visibility coach. So I work with corporations and entrepreneurs. And I've been asked, like, how can they help their teams expand? Obviously, at the end of the day, we want to grow revenue. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a business, you want to grow revenue. And I always say, like, give them ownership. It's not about just giving them tasks to do. If they can become an entrepreneur and give them ownership and allow them to fail. Now, if they continue failing on the same task, that's an issue, but you need to give them the space and the grace to allow them to fail so they can fail forward. And at the end of the day, that's where creativity and growth is going to happen. But if you brought these people in as team members, then you need to trust them to take ownership of some things and let them run with the ball a little.
Yeah, I talk about this. I have a chapter in my book about creating entrepreneurial organizations, and I call it entrepreneurial leadership. You just nailed it. You have to, like, the managerial paradigm is essential. I'm not disparaging it, right? Mm-hmm. But the values of managerial paradigms are top down. They're efficiency based. They're error reducing paradigms that tend to be intolerant of exploration and experimentation. And entrepreneurial leadership requires us to carve out space and time in the margins for people to explore. You want to encourage that in the margins. In the same way that I just said to you a minute ago, you don't quit your day job, you don't drop out of school, you don't mortgage your house, you explore in the margins. Same thing.
Yeah. Carve
out some space and time. That entrepreneurial potential is in your organization. It's so there.
Yeah, this is so good. And it leads me to my next question, which I know we're getting close on time, and I want to be respectful of your time. So I'm going to merge this question into one, but there's two pieces of it. When it comes, I have teenagers, which is why I'm really curious about this. Like, I'm trying to foster an entrepreneurial spirit into them. I want them to do whatever makes them happy. Like, I want their Sunday to be somebody else's Tuesday. Like, I want everything, like, they wake up excited, whether it's to go to the beach or whether it's to do work for the day, no matter what that looks like, whether they're working for a company or they have their own company. How do we as parents foster that entrepreneurial spirit in them? Like, how we want to raise independent, resourceful children. So what practical steps can we as parents take to nurture that entrepreneurial mindset in our kids? And second piece to that is in the school education system, because I know some of the schools offer entrepreneurship as like a core study, but most do not. So what challenges do you believe need to happen, or what changes, not challenges, what changes do you need to be happening inside of our education system to help students with that entrepreneurial mindset? Because the world is different than it was years ago. Did you just raise your book? Yeah. Read the book.
So I mean, yeah, you're hitting all the right notes here, Heidi. I have a chapter on raising entrepreneurial children, and I have a chapter on entrepreneurship and education. So let me start with the education one first. Yes, entrepreneurship programs are popping up in public education, but they're not really entrepreneurship. They're small business management courses. They call them entrepreneurship. They're teaching kids how to write business plans and how to do market research, which isn't really helpful for a typical entrepreneur. They're not teaching them discovery skills. Okay. So that's what's missing. But more importantly, like, our systems of education are creating entrepreneurs by accident rather than by design. And I'm advocating that we introduce entrepreneurial discovery learning in the margins starting at grade 5. That kids are encouraged to cultivate entrepreneurial projects of their own. I just got back from a 2-week training tour in Mexico with a very prestigious entrepreneurial university system in Mexico. It's like college is too late. We don't start treating professional athletes when they're 20 years old, right? It's that. But so let me back up now, because I have the chapter on raising entrepreneurial children is important. And you said it. Like, if you want your children to adapt and thrive in a rapidly changing world, they better, by God, learn how to develop at least basic entrepreneurial competencies. And you as a parent, we as parents cannot rely on our system of education. And by the way, like, invasive parenting is, not really conducive to entrepreneurial activity. But I tell a story in the book about a guy who had a 12-year-old kid obsessed with video games. And the kid asked his dad for $400. His dad was like, no way, you got to earn it. And the kid figured out how to sell birdhouses. And he forgot all about video games. Now he's got a website. He's making birdhouses, 12 years old.
Yeah.
But the point is, the point that I just want to land here is, Heidi, is that what you want for your children, and what I would encourage you to do is, like, run, don't walk to Amazon, buy the book, and encourage your teenage children to undertake a project of their own. Give them $50 and tell them to go turn it into $500 by making themselves useful to other humans. So you can make $50 mistakes once a week. It's not going to kill you. But it sort of sets you on this track where you start to learn, I'm not just fitting into the world, I can actually affect the world. That's really what we need to shift in the minds of young people. There's a time to fit in, and there's a time to stand out.
Yeah. And these little humans, their brains are developing through their early 20s. So now is the time to shape it in a positive way and in a worldwide changing way. Like, we have no idea, like, they're capable of so much if we just held them high and allowed them
100%. And we get out of the way.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what I talk about in the book, is undertake an entrepreneurial project of your own. I call it the Entrepreneurial Mindset Challenge. Whether it's $5 or $50, it doesn't matter. Like, make it into a game. Turn $5 into 50. When you get to 50, try to go, like, those are like levels in a video game. Get 50 to 500, 500 to 5. When you get to 5,000, your mindset has been irrevocably altered in a good way.
They're different people. Like, they're completely different than they were 2 months before, or even a month or 3 months before. Like, as we're growing, that's one program that I joined. They were like, you're not even going to recognize yourself in 6 months. Like,
that's it.
Allow your children to do this. You're not going to recognize them. They're not going to recognize themselves. And they would have impacted, you don't even know how many people in the process. So Gary, let us know how we can reach out to you. You mentioned we can find the book on Amazon, but let us repeat that again, the name of the book, and how can we connect with you?
So the name of my new book, and it just came out in December, it's called The Entrepreneurial Mindset Advantage. The Hidden Logic That Unleashes Human Potential is distributed by Simon & Schuster. Wherever books are sold, you can find it. You can find me on my website. It's GarySchoeniger.com. And you can find me in like LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. I don't really do Twitter anymore. I'm not super adept at Instagram, but yeah, it's all over the place. This is an important idea. And back to your kids, Heidi, these are the skills employers demand. Like, that's what I want parents to hear. Like, this will give your child an enormous advantage over their peers.
So
Employers want people who can identify and solve problems. They're not waiting for somebody else. You know what I say to young people sometimes like this? Here's Entrepreneurial Mindset 101. Take the shitty day job you already have, show up 20 minutes early and stay 20 minutes late, and watch how quickly opportunity finds you.
Yeah.
It's just a shift.
Oh, that's so good. And be open to it. We've got to be open to receiving the opportunity. It's out there. Open that door for possibilities and expansion.
We're not here to serve ourselves. We're here to like serve others.
Yeah.
It's so counterintuitive. Like, once you realize like you're going to get what you want by helping other people get what they want, that's a subtle yet powerful shift that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gary, for being here with me today. This has been such a privilege and an honor. I know I've learned a lot. I'm excited to bring your wisdom to my children. As I shared with you, they're 14 and 15. My daughter will be 16, and I'm always talking to them about the possibilities out there and creating their own path and being open to all possibilities. And you just gave a lot of gold nuggets for me, and I know for a lot of people listening. So thank you, Gary, for being here with me today.
Thank you, Heidi. It was a great pleasure.
Absolutely. So go to GarySchoeniger.com. We have all of Gary's information inside the show notes. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. Let us know you're here and leave a comment. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, please leave a review. We would love to hear from you and let Gary know that you are listening to him. You can check him out at GarySchoeniger.com. You can see him on LinkedIn, Facebook. Not so active on Instagram. That's okay. Go find him, search him, reach out to him and connect with him. He's a super nice guy. He would love to hear from you, and let him know that you heard him here on the Business Growth Spotlight podcast. Also, get his book at the Entrepreneurial Mindset Advantage on Amazon or wherever you find your favorite books. Thank you for joining us today. And if you feel your business is blending in and you're ready to grow your visibility, be seen as the expert in your space, and scale to the next level, then go grab our free download of Spotlight to Scale Blueprint. You can go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint to grab that. And again, go grab Gary's book, The Entrepreneurial Mindset Advantage, and go to GarySchoeniger.com. Thanks again, Gary, for being here. Thank you for listening to us today and joining Gary and I on the Business Growth Spotlight podcast. We will see you on the next episode.